So today we're going to look at restoring a Atari 520 ST. You can see it running in the background. This is obviously working, but how did we get to that point and what were the faults? And what I'd like to say is that retrobrighting. Now, I didn't use retrobright on this machine at all because I don't rate it for everything. A lot of people use retrobrighting for everything, but I think that in some cases it's going to do more damage than good, and but in other cases, such as keyboard keys, it is useful. It can brighten up your keys, which are made from a very different plastic and they are generally a little bit thicker than the actual cases. And on the Atari ST the cases are very flimsy, and they creak and they groan and they're not the best. Again, Jack Trammell's cost cutting basically when he brought these machines out, which was the way he kept them down to the price point, which was a third of what Apple were charging for what was arguably an inferior machine in a lot of ways. But we're going to look into how we got this machine to this condition. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so this is a 520 ST. It looks in reasonable condition apart from it's very yellowed, but it's not as yellow as the case I'm going to use because I need to prove that this system works. So first off though, I'm going to need to fix a fault, and the fault's with the video on this machine. Now with the board out, I couldn't particularly see anything wrong with it. There was no capacitors blown. There was nothing obviously causing this machine not to display properly, but I'll show you what the fault is. Okay, so I'm just going to plug it into a monitor and then power it on. So we're using a standard Atari monitor. And although it boots up to the screen, you can hear it. So I've got to find out what's causing that noise. It's not the RF because I'm not using RF. So let's have a quick look at it. So everything I've checked is running 3 to 5 volts. So there's no problem with it causing an over voltage or anything like that going literally through the board. And it kind of leads me to think there's a ground plane problem, which is what I suspected anyway, but I just had to check because more often than not on these machines you'll find that if there's a problem with the chips getting far too much voltage, it will start to buzz, start to crackle, start to, you know, basically play up and put out random noises through a speaker. And you know, a lot of that's down to capacitors, but a lot of that's down to the regulator. But this seems to be fine. So I've got to do a search on the ground plane, which is where I think the noise is coming from. Now, I've now spent probably the best part of an hour searching for this, and as luck would have it, just where my probe is, you may be able to see a very faint area here. Well, that, believe it or not, is causing the humming. I found it by complete accident. I just literally put my finger across it and the humming went away. So I'm acting as a proper ground for this now, and the humming disappears. And there's a very, very fine crack running here, and it's just hanging on. It's hanging on enough to allow the machine to power. So I'm just going to solder this up. I'll run a small wire across here, bridge it and solder it, and then that should solve the problem. Sometimes it's a very simple problem that causes machines to play up, and this one, although structurally it's okay, all the voltages are fine, everything seems to work, it was just that annoying buzzing noise. And you know, originally I thought it had something to do with the RF, but then I went straight to a monitor and it caused the same problem. So then that's why I had to do a bit of research and a bit of searching. There was nothing particularly on the boards about this, or bulletin boards about this fault anyway, so going through the voltages on the pins of the chips, find out what's high, what's low, and then discovering that they're all fine. It's not a fact that the power supply is over voltaging and putting out far too much. It had to lead to a ground plane, and I couldn't find this at first. Just couldn't find it. It's that small, because when you look at it normally it looks fine, but it's only when you start to feel it with the end of something like this, you can feel a ridge, and it's stressed. I believe this was probably laid down in two halves when it was made in the factory, so this ground area here was laid in and this track was laid over the top, and it's just separating through time. So that's an easy fix. So let's get on with the rest of the restoration now. Okay, so this is how disgusting this Atari ST case is. It's very yellow if you look at it compared to the bottom, so it won't retro bright, it's too far gone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint it and see how it goes. And there you go, 2 coats of grey paint. It's plasticized paint, so it's looking a lot better than it ever did. It's very close to the original finish, so we'll see how it looks like when it dries. So we're going to take the newly painted bottom of the case, and you can see how close the colour match is between the case and the inside, and we're going to put it back together. So we'll just put it all in loose. Okay, so the cover's on, the shield for the disk drive's on, the disk drive's in place ready to screw in, and all we need to do is screw these screws in. And the shield itself is alright, it's better than most, so it doesn't really need a lot of work, and I'm just gonna put it together. Okay, so just screwing them in place one at a time, and then all we'll have to do is line up the disk drive on its mounts, and then hopefully clean the keyboard up and put a case on it. So there's one Atari ST lowercase back together. So rather than using this keyboard, which has had decades of use and bits and pieces dropped in it, and you know, it really needs a good clean, I'm not going to use this because I refurbished one earlier. It just needed a clean. I like this one does, and I put it away for use for later on. And here it is. So I'm just going to open it and then we'll see what it looks like. And there we have it, a Atari ST keyboard which is cleaned a little while ago and then just put to one side. So we're going to use this one because it's don't really need to take the other one apart if we don't have to, and I'm going to keep that one as a spare. And there we have the keyboard in place, so it's just waiting for the cover. And there we have one refurbished Atari 520 ST FM in its original colours. That's just for comparison. The one behind was actually quite a decent case. I took off this originally, and this is the finished item. As you can see, it's a lot better quality, it's a lot shiny, and it's very close to the original. And if I scan from this up to this monitor, which is almost there because it hasn't really faded, and you bring it down to here, it's just about there. Most Atari SDs go this colour of the one behind, or you know, this colour of this Mega ST here, same here. But doesn't take a lot to bring it back round to that. Although this needed a repair to the board, but other than that the case was quite simple. And the reason I used the really bad case was just to show you how a really bad case, which is oxidizing basically, can be refurbished and turned into almost new. Pop on the monitor and we're going to turn the refurbished ST on. And there we go, a silent Atari ST just booting up. And there it's running, you can hear it clicking for a desk. And there we have it, the Atari ST's booted, and it's quiet. Right into the speaker of the monitor, not a sound. So that's a nicely refurbished Atari ST. And we'll try it on RF now just to make sure it works on a colour TV. Which it does, perfectly. Now here's the completed Atari 520 ST FM. And as you can see, it looks, for all intents and purposes, as if the case had always been like this. It's very, very close to the original colour, if not the original colour. And as we pan around, there's an unmolested monitor, just to give you an idea of what it was before and what it should look like and what it does look like. So if you think about restoring one of these machines, try and get a colour match first. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed that, but not everyone is comfortable with using one of these. Okay, the paint that was applied was a plasticized paint, so basically it's designed for being put onto plastic, and it's designed to be used via one of these. And it doesn't take long, it only takes 10 or 15 minutes to apply the coats and then let it harden off. But if you haven't got a compressor and you don't have one of these, or you're not sure about using one of these, the best way to do it is to buy a stone grey. It's in a plastic paint or a plasticized paint. If you can't get a plasticized paint, then you can get plasticizers to make it work on plastic. So don't worry if you can't get paint specifically for plastic. Okay, there's a lot of products out there, automotive products generally, that are plasticizers, and it's like a very, very watery coating which bonds to the surface of the plastic and allows you to then repaint the case. And now that's something that, you know, you can look into, and you don't particularly need to one of these. I just had one, so it was something I would normally use, but aerosols are just as good. So that's how I did it, and that's how I got this machine from the condition it was. Although the condition it was better than the top I used, because I used that really, really bad top to prove a point, because that wouldn't have retrobrighted and it would have been very brittle by the time it was finished. And painting in this manner can restore the plastics, whatever the condition of the original plastics. And so that's what I did, and as you can see, the results are impressive really when you think about it, for a few hours work. And this machine's going to live for a lot longer. Okay, so thanks for watching, thanks for listening, and I hope you subscribe, and we'll see you on this channel again in the future. Okay, thanks a lot.